I want to welcome everybody back to another social distance learning. It's a Tuesday night. We had last week off because, well, we've been doing this for a year nonstop and we needed the week off because we're tired. Uh, Tonight, the bench doctor, Mr. Scott Richardson, is going to walk us through um, the ins and outs of becoming an FFL. Obviously, this is not legal advice. None of us here are lawyers. Our lawyer is in the middle of actually moving her house, so she's not even on the call to yell at us if we do something wrong. But more anecdotal experience around paperwork and around making the application and around talking to the ATF. And I know for a fact that we have several folks that have FFL 03s, which is the Curio and Relic license, which is different from the one that Scott's going to talk about tonight. And we can talk about those differences later. We are live everywhere. We are live on YouTube, which is unusual. But Scott promises me there will be no guns on the screen, so YouTube won't get mad at us. But we're on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, our private Facebook lounge, YouTube, and I think that's it. I know there are some folks on our Discord server that are following one of those feeds, and they might ask questions. If you are on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, or Facebook, be patient. We might not get to your questions. The best way to get your questions answered is to sign up for these. And you sign up for these by hitting our website, membership.theliberalgunclub.com, and clicking on events after you logged in and signing up. And then you too can come and ask questions directly in the chat without any delay. That said, we do frequently go back to the various feeds and look at the questions that have come in and try to address them. I know Scott's gone back as recently as yesterday and looked at a feed from a couple weeks ago and answered somebody's questions. So you can ask questions, just don't be surprised if we don't answer them right away. Let's see. I think that covers it. So if you've got questions, we've got our co-host Lonnie here who's going to collect the questions up and interject them at an appropriate time. So drop them in the chat. He's going to write them down, and then he'll figure out the right place to interrupt Scott and ask the questions. If we don't get to your question right away, be patient. Lonnie's pretty good about this, as are all our moderators. He will eventually get to your question and make sure it's asked before it gets too far off topic. Can you think of anything else I've missed, gentlemen?
Nope. I figured I get a lot of questions direct message to me because I recently gotten my Type 7 manufacturer's FFL, and I figured it would be kind of fun to talk about in this.
It's a timely topic, and I'm gonna shut up, turn my camera off, and you go.
Yeah. So I figured, well, what this is be kind of fun to just do it live and kind of answer questions. It's not as arduous as you think it would be, but there are things that they're going to want to see, and then they're going to ask you. So the way it works is the first thing you do is you go out to the ATF's website, and they have an electronic form that you can fill out a lot of the questions just in the PDF, and then you once you fill it out, you sign it and date it, and send it in with the requisite other documentation that they require. But I figured I would go through what I did. I was successful with mine with no headaches at all, but it's because I, just by dumb luck, did all of the other things that they were going to ask me to do. So for a home-based FFL, which is what I am, I applied for what's called a Type 7. Most people would apply for a Type 1, which allows you to buy and sell guns. It allows you to build guns for people, but it doesn't allow you to manufacture, say, build your own lowers, say complete an 80% lower, engrave it, and it doesn't allow you to make a suppressor. So I wanted to make suppressors, and I wanted to just play around with building, custom guns. So I thought, what the heck, I'm going to ask for a Type 7, see if they'll grant it. If not, I'll accept the Type 1. And, but I filled out the form. But prior to that, I went to my local municipality. I live in Oregon, so this is all pertinent to Oregon. I can't speak to other states, but I'm speaking to you from Oregon, so this is how it works here. I went to my local municipality. I live in the city of West Lynn, which is in the Portland area. And I know, as screwed up as my city government is, I just filled out the form and I was very honest. I said I want to open a home-based firearms business that will involve receiving firearms, transferring firearms, working on them, and possibly manufacturing firearms and firearms accessories. And I was very transparent about it because I knew from previous dealings with the city that nobody was going to read it. They were going to rubber stamp it and cash my check, which they did. They didn't. Nobody balked or batted an eye. And I know there are other home-based FFLs in the area. I know one guy across town that does it as well. So I figured, well, I'll argue it if they want to throw up any resistance. But they cashed my check and sent my business license in the mail. This is it right here, granted by the city. So I did that, and then I registered with the state of Oregon. I registered my business, and I got my state tax ID number. And then you also need to get and this part jammed me up, but you need to get an EIN number from the IRS. And it's a form you can fill out online through the IRS, and it's usually instant. If you go looking for it, there are legal services that'll charge you $100 to do what you can do in 5 minutes. You do not need to pay somebody to get you an EIN number. Do it yourself. Mine, it came back and said they couldn't complete it, so I had to fax back a written application, and that takes 45 days for them to respond to a written application. So you need that EIN number to pay your special occupation tax. So as a Type 7 FFL, I have to pay my SOT, but I can't pay my SOT without the EIN. So I'm learning this all as I go. I thought, well, I'll just send them. My SOT is going to be $500 as a manufacturer. I have to send that off, but it goes from July 1st through June 30th. So the ATF guy, when I spoke to him, said, unless you want to pay $500 now and $500 again in June, don't do it until June. Just wait until then. So I can't manufacture stuff for people until I pay that SOT. But anyway, that's for a Type 7. A Type 1.
Is that if you pay it to the federal government, or is that you?
Yeah, it's a special occupation tax, and it's a Type 1 has to pay it as well, but it's a lot cheaper for other types of FFLs. I just happened to choose the one with the most expensive SOT, and I knew it going in. I knew I was going to have to pay $500, but I didn't care because it affords me a whole lot of things I can do with that SOT and that FFL. But so if you're going to do this as a business, you need to be in business. You can't. The ATF will not grant you a commercial FFL so that you can get good deals on guns and ammo. They will shut you down. You have to be actually in business and prove to them that you intend to be in business by getting your business license and getting it through your local zoning. My business application was enough. I had the business license already approved. So I just faxed that over to him, and that satisfied that requirement. And I had already registered with the state. And he said, those are the two things. What happens is people fill out the form and send it in, and then he calls them, and then he spends a couple of weeks walking them through doing all of the other things before he can issue the license. So once you've filled out your form, you're registered with the state, you've gotten it past your local zoning board or whatever. If you're out in an unincorporated area, I don't think you need it, but I would call the ATF. They're great about answering these questions. The times that I've spoken to them, they want to help you. And the agent that called me to walk me through the process sounded like he earnestly wanted to give me the FFL. He was just making sure that I didn't trip any red flags when he spoke to me. We'll go into that a little bit more later, what that conversation was. But So you're going to want to get your ducks in a row, which would be your business license, and get registered with the state, and get your EIN first, and save yourself the headache that I'm going through now. So when you fill out your application, and you have several boxes to choose from on here, I got to be careful what I show because there are credit card information on here. But you have a type 1, type 2, type 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. They're all different types of FFLs. A type 1 is a standard dealer in firearms. That's somebody like your average gun store is a type 1. And that's the most broad. It allows you to register with distributors and have guns sent to you. You get on the distribution list. You're not going to save a lot of money as an FFL buying guns because you can't underprice the big online retailers. They buy in such volume that they get a price that you can't get unless you're willing to buy 20 Glock 19s. And I don't know any small businesses that can afford to tie up that kind of cash and inventory for one type of gun. So you're not going to save a lot buying guns, but you can register as a dealer with like Brownells and Midway, and you'll save some money ordering things. It smooths things over. It makes it easy if somebody wants you to order them a gun. You're not going to save them a lot of money, but you can get it faster and easier with your FFL. A type 2 is a pawnbroker, and that has its own set of rules because pawning a firearm, the background checks and that process is different for pawning a gun versus just selling one or buying one. So they're subject to slightly different rules than the type 1. A type 3 is a curios and relics. And I had a type 3 CNR FFL. I still have it, but it's dormant now because my type 7 supersedes it. And that allows you like here in Oregon, I can buy a CNR firearm and it can be shipped to my door. It doesn't have to go through a transfer if you have a type 3. And it's a nice one to have if you like collecting guns that are over 50 years old. The problem you run into sometimes is people don't understand the regulations around what is a CNR gun and what isn't. And I remember getting into arguments with some of these suppliers saying, listen, that gun's a CNR gun. Here's my CNR FFL. Well, it's not listed explicitly on the list. I'm like, yes, but if you check the ATF's website, anything over 50 years old is CNR. So you're going to get some that won't send it to you as a CNR. Some will insist on sending it to a regular FFL. Get used to it. You would expect them to know, but they don't. A lot of times auction houses are really easy to work with a CNR, or they're a righteous pain to deal with as a CNR. But
so Scott, before we move too much further past your initial, there were a couple of questions about paperwork and tax returns. So what paperwork did you have to do with your municipality to make it legal to fabricate in your house? That's the first one.
My new municipality didn't have any regulations around that. I was very transparent because I went into this thinking that they weren't going to give me a type 7. I just thought I'd try and swing for the fences. And my municipality couldn't care less. They didn't ask any questions. They just rubber stamped it, took my check, and sent me the business license.
And then the other question is are you aware of whether or not the ATF looks at your tax return to make sure that your business is active?
Well, you register as a business with the state. They check with the state. In Oregon, they looked and saw that, yes, I had registered a business with the state that matched all of the other documentation that I sent in, the address, the business owner, all of those things matched up. It was the same across all of those, the business license.
And that's common in a lot of state jurisdictions. In Massachusetts, that information is available to the public. All you got to do is go out and look the company up. So the ATF will do the same thing here and there and everywhere else. So as soon as you get good with your local state government, that stuff's available to them to look up. So,
yeah, and your EIN number is your tax ID for your business. So when you contact the IRS, you fill out, it's sort of the same thing as a DBA, you know, doing business as. I filed the DBA in Oregon, got my Oregon tax ID, and then you file with the IRS and you say, okay, I'm going to run this business, issue me a tax ID. That's the tax ID for the business. So that's one more piece of red tape that that I would suggest you do prior to sending in your FFL, because
An EIN is like a social security number for a company.
yeah,
EINs are the way that you file taxes, etc. And that's probably a little beyond the scope. Although if folks want to drop into Discord after this, I can blather on about corporation taxes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just got it. He hasn't filed any yet.
Yeah. The tax stuff is a separate conversation. I'm just going over the stuff that you need to satisfy the ATF that you are indeed intending to open a business. Yeah. Somebody mentioned online, the type 3 CNR is a personal collector's FFL. It's not a business. You don't need to be a business to be a type 3. It's a personal license.
They actually don't want you to be a business.
Right. They don't want you buying and selling firearms. It's there as a collector. You know, if you sell one of your CNR guns, you have to fill out a disposition record. Well, I'll go into that when I get into the record keeping on the FFL stuff. But anyway, so you decide what you want to be. Do you want to be a type 1, just a dealer in firearms other than destructive devices? A type 7 is a manufacturer of firearms other than destructive devices. And you'll see there's instructions when you go to fill this out. Type 8 is an importer of firearms and ammunition. Type 9 is dealer in destructive devices. I didn't even want to ask what that was. It sounds like too much fun. Type 10 is a manufacturer of destructive devices, ammunition for destructive devices, or armor-piercing ammunition. Type 11 is importer of destructive devices, ammunition for destructive devices, or armor-piercing ammunition. I don't think those are ones that most people would apply for. Type 7 allows you to make your own ammo and sell it. I will warn you that there's a huge tax on doing that. If you do sell ammo, it's like 11% you're paying off the top to the feds. That doesn't include your state. I don't know what the state laws are around manufacturing ammo, but I have all of the equipment to reload my ammo, but I have no intention of selling any, because I don't want the responsibility of somebody damaging their gun with ammo that I loaded. Maybe someday I might order bulk ammo and sell bulk ammo, but I'm not going to make my own ammo.
So Scott, one last question before we move on to the paperwork side. Does the 07 encompass AR building?
No, you can build ARs with a type 1 because most of the time somebody's going to order a receiver, say from Arrow or someplace, and that person's already manufactured it and engraved it with a serial number. If it comes to you with the serial number, it's already somebody's already manufactured it. Now, if I took an 80% lower and milled it for a customer, I would have to give it a serial number, and I am the manufacturer of that device at that point. That's the way it works with, I got mine because I wanted to build suppressors. So right now, when I build a suppressor, I build it, and once it's complete, when I deem it complete, I have to give it a serial number, and I have to do what's called a Form 2 to let the ATF know that that device now exists. And that's the same with a gun. If I built, like my Type 7 allows me to build pretty much anything. I could build a full auto AR-15, and then I Form 2 it, and the ATF knows it exists. It's in my inventory, it's in my books. But when the business ceases to do business, that fully automatic weapon has to be destroyed. It can't be sold. It can't live on. Now I can buy what are called post samples, and you can sell post samples, and those are another rabbit hole. So you can get a law letter from your local agency, and they say, we want to buy new fully automatic AR-15s. Can you build them? You say yes. Give me a letter from the chief of police, authorize, and they give you what's called a law letter, and now you can manufacture those things and sell them to the appropriate agencies. And those are. You'll get into a conversation with the ATF about doing those things. You can also buy what are called no law letter guns, which are from another type 7 that's going out of business and let their SOT expire. They can sell you those no law letter fully auto devices, and you can buy them and keep them in the business. But as soon as you go out of business, you have to sell it. You cannot retain it. You can't make yourself a whole bunch of full auto toys and then go out of business and keep them in and as your personal inventory. It doesn't work that way. They're all tracked, and the ATF will know, and they will come out to your house and they will confiscate any full auto stuff that they find, because once your SOT expires and you're out of business, you can't play that game anymore. But any NFA items other than full auto that you make during your business, any silencers, SBRs, short barrel shotguns, things like that, will transfer directly to you as an individual without the tax stamps when the business goes under, but not full auto. Full auto is a different thing. So there are some, you can make yourself some fun toys, but you better have a business need to make them. Or, if you just keep filling out Form 2s for a whole bunch of NFA stuff and you're not selling anything, the ATF is going to come out and they're going to audit your books. And if you don't have legitimate business needs, a legitimate business running, they're going to shut you down. So I would caution you to go into it with your eyes open and call the ATF and have a conversation. They're very they've been great to talk to for me. You're on the phone with the ATF a bit when you first start, because you want to make sure that you get all your I's dotted and T's crossed. But once you submit your form, you decide what you're going to be. You're going to be a type 1 or a type 7. You have to go down and you have to get an old-fashioned fingerprint card. You have to call the feds and they'll send you a couple of fingerprint cards, and you have to go to your local. I went to my local sheriff and I paid, I don't know, $10-15, and they did the fingerprint card for me. And then you send in 2 passport-size photos, and you attach it to your application. Let's see, like this is the second page here with my mug on it. So you fill all this out, you send it in, and then you wait. And it took them about 6 or 8 weeks to call me. I was driving home and I was in the truck with my son, and I answered the phone on my through my steering wheel, and it was, this is Agent McLean from the ATF, and my son gave me this look of like, what have you done now? But it was just the ATF guy wanting to set up an interview, and so we agreed on a time, and they call you. Normally, they in non-COVID times, they would come out to you, your place of business. If it's in your home, then you're meeting in your home. If it's brick and mortar, then you're going to meet where the license is registered to. And but with COVID, they don't come out to your place of business anymore. He called me, and we did a Microsoft Teams video conference. And I walked him around my house, showing him my workbench, showing him the alarm system that I have and the video recording system that I have, and the safe storage of guns, where the room that I have that the safes are in and the door is locked. So it's not accessible by people just coming into my house. So that's the first thing they're going to do, is assess your place of business. And he's looking to see, does it look like you're actually conducting a business, or are you just a radical collector? I had all kinds of tools and things on my bench, and it looks like I actually work on guns here. So he didn't question it. But I was walking around the front of my house, showing him my house, the address. He looked it up on Google Maps and could see that what I was showing him was the address on Google Maps. And then it turned into a 5-hour conversation, and they interview you about your application. They ask you direct questions about your business. What is your plan? Um, what's your experience? What's your background? What do you plan to do? Um, and then you spend hours going over paperwork. You're going over your application. He's going to go through your application line by line, asking you questions. And then once that's all done and correct, they email you more forms than I can even begin to describe. This is the checklist that you go through. Um, they send this to you, and these all everything with a checkbox are things that you're going to talk about. You're going to go over each one of these licenses, these forms, these different provisions, state and local laws, gunsmithing activities if you're going to be doing gunsmithing, um, required records and reports. So I spent 5 hours going each one of these documents, um, and signing it that yes, indeed, we did discuss all these things, and I faxed it back. And so you can see all of the documents that you're going to download. You don't have to print them all out, but you're going to download all of these documents and review them with him. And then you're going to spend a good amount of time going over how to fill out the 4473s and the different types of acquisitions and dispositions of keeping your books. So if the gun is still in inventory, if it's just a straight transfer, you received a gun and you're transferring it to somebody. They give you this example of all these different types of transfers, and you're going to go over each one of these with them and ask questions. Ask questions about this, because this is really the lifeblood of keeping your license, is making sure that this is correct. Um, and so that's what the interview is all about with the ATF. They're trying to make sure, they're trying to determine that yes, indeed, you do have a legitimate business, and they're going to make sure you understand thoroughly your duties and responsibilities. There's no requirement. People always get tripped up. They think that you need to have a gun vault and all this security. They don't have any requirement for having your guns in a safe. It's weird. You would think that would be a requirement, but it's not. He says, no, it's not a requirement. We're just kind of looking to see. What they want to know is, are you paying attention to security? And he was happy that I have a video system, so I'm recording all the time in the cloud, anybody coming to my door. He said that's usually if somebody gets robbed, they've been there before, they go look at the video, and they usually find that person had come by to do a transfer or just case the place out. So the video is, he was happy to see that. But he noticed that I had safes. They were behind a locked door. They're not out in the open. But those aren't requirements. They just want to see, are you paying attention to these things? So that you're going to be on the phone with these guys for quite a while, and sit back, relax, write down a ton of questions that you have prior to speaking with them, and they're great about answering them, and they're great about knowing your local state laws. This guy had been an ATF agent in Seattle, so he knew Oregon and Washington transfer laws. Um, and there's some weird stuff there between Oregon and Washington. Have different laws now around long guns. It used to be I could receive a long gun, I could transfer just straight through a long gun to somebody from Washington, but now certain guns have a 10-day waiting period in Washington, and I can't do that. But you'll also get access to a whole bunch of paperwork. There's a lot of really good information about the record keeping and things like that. You'll have this quick reference and best practices guide that you can download. You have just a whole bunch of stuff that they send you, and get used to seeing emails from the ATF. You'll be registered even with a Type 3 CNR. You'll get emails from the ATF about notifications and alerts and things like that. Here, this is business license letter, gunsmith, dealer, manufacturer. This is if I wanted to do manufacture full auto for a local law enforcement agency. These are all of the regulations around how to do that. So once they interview you, you'll have a pretty good idea where you stand by the end of that conversation. I was pretty certain that I was going to get my Type 7 because he sent me an email the next day and he said, I need to clarify something I said about Washington law. Oh, and by the way, I forwarded your paperwork on to issuance. So about a week later, I got you just get this envelope in the mail and it's your FFL. And it looks like this. It's nothing spectacular. It's just a piece of paper with and I could show this because this is just public record, but this is your license number up here and the date that it's good till. And you have to post that in your place of business. This is a copy. If you do this and you get your FFL, before you sign and date it, take it and make about 50 copies of it without your signature and date on it, because you're going to end up sending copies of this to people, and some people want to see a current date on your paperwork. So I have blank copies. I just sign it and then I scan it and send it over so it's today's date. Some people complain about that. Some people don't care that I sent them one that was dated in March. Other people, I want to see one with today's date. Okay, so make copies of it blank so you can sign it and date it later. And that's what this folder is just a whole stack of copies of my FFL that I can fax off if I need to. I just keep an electronic PDF copy of it. Most of the time that suffices. But you're also going to have to keep what's called a bound book of your guns, of your activity. This is my old bound book from my Type 3 days. This book will work, or you can order these from RK Enterprises. RK Enterprises has a whole stack of like a FFL get started package that comes with gunsmithing record book and firearms record book. And then this is personal firearms. So if your firearms aren't part of the business, you can keep track of them in here. You don't have to. There's no ATF requirement for that. But this is what the bound book looks like. So in here, every gun that you acquire with your FFL, so somebody ordered a gun and they send it to you, it comes in here and it's an acquisition. And you're keeping track of the manufacturer, the model, serial number, type, caliber, date, and the name and license number of how you acquired this, what FFL sent it to you. When your customer comes to pick it up, you now have a disposition record. So the ATF is going to come out once a year and grab these books, and they're going to want to find a corresponding 4473 for each one of these dispositions. So you're going to want to keep the 4473s on hand, and also the background check, whatever you get back from the state, just throw those in a folder. And you're going to want to it's a good idea to keep a transaction number and write that on your manila folders and just keep them by the month and year. So every acquisition and disposition for March of 2021 goes in a folder. And every month, just put them in a folder. It's easier for them to track them that way because they're going to go over this book line by line and make sure that if that gun doesn't have a disposition, that it's in your inventory. If there's no disposition record, then it's in your inventory, or it better be. There better not be a lost gun in your books. I'll tell you that now. That will get you shut down. So you're going to go over this stuff extensively with the ATF during your interview, and they'll give you a lot of good reference material on how to fill this out and what the requirements are. But if you're going to have to,
I'm going to abuse my privilege here and supersede Lonnie because he's got some questions. But when you're transferring between FFLs, either another 01, another 07, or an 03, what does that record keeping look like?
Okay, so what's going to happen is like I'm doing a transfer for a guy that ordered a lower from Arrow. So Arrow takes a copy of my FFL and they put that in their book of who they did they did a disposition. So that gun left there, that lower left their inventory. And so they're going to say it went to this FFL, which is mine. And then the ATF can now come look at my book and say, okay, you received it from Arrow. And then where's the disposition? Oh, okay, here's the 4473 with the customer that gun went to, so that they can always track it back. That's what they're looking for, is that traceability on that gun, or that lower, or that whatever that serialized piece is. That's what it is. Is it's just they're tracing it back, so they can look in my book, see who I received it from, go to them, and they're going to find a copy of my FFL, and they can just keep going back. I don't know if that answers the question, but here in Oregon, a Type 3 can receive a gun from out of state on their CNR, but I can't sell as a CNR to another CNR without a transfer. Any gun between two residents of Oregon have to be transferred. So a CNR is only good for receiving guns from out of state in Oregon. It's useless for buying guns within the state. It's really weird how the law is written. They have not exempted Type 3s in Oregon. They're trying to get the law changed, but nobody in Salem is interested in fixing that. So it's kind of a weird thing. I don't know in other states how CNRs are handled. But when I had my Type 3, this is my Type 3 book, and so in here, these are my acquisitions, and I haven't sold any of the ones that I bought, but I have the FFL of who I received it from. They send a copy of it along with the gun in the box or the packing slip. So I would just record that here, and then if I sold it, I would put it in my disposition. So that's all that is.
Scott, that has to go from FFL to FFL, though, right?
Correct.
When you do transfer? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm receiving it from an FFL, or I'm receiving it from Lonnie walks in and says, I want to sell this gun to Ed. So I'm receiving it from Lonnie. It goes into my book. I take custody of it, and then I get the 4473, and it can leave my books as soon as I have a disposition record for it, a 4473 that proves that I transferred it legally. So it can be private party. It doesn't have to come into my books from an FFL. It can come in as a private party, but
it has to go out as an FFL, right?
Yeah, I'm putting my name on it when it goes out. I take that 4473. And you want to be really careful doing the 4473s. Go over those things with a fine-tooth comb, and then have somebody else that's pretty detail-oriented review them as well, and make sure that your dates are correct, that your serial numbers, all of that information is spot on. You don't want to make mistakes on those. But yeah, it can come in as a private party or from an FFL into my book. But it has to leave either to another FFL, or it's going out with a 4473, or it can be in my inventory.
So there's a question in the chat that I'm going to answer without being a lawyer, because we always want to ask lawyers these questions. But the question in the chat is, if you keep a record of every gun coming and going, isn't that kind of backdoor registry? And as I think Scott might be about to explain to you, you don't give these records to the ATF. They come in and evaluate them on an annual basis. So nobody's got these electronic. These are sitting in Scott's safe. So there's no registry per se.
I have to keep them. I have to keep them for 20 years. Or if I go out of business, so, after 20 years, you're going to grab the first batch of 4473s and shred them. At least I would. I wouldn't give them to anybody. I'm going to destroy them, because that's what I'm bound to do, or, I'm obligated to do. I'm not obligated to give them to the ATF. Now, if they subpoena them, I have no choice. But if I go out of business in that 20-year period, then the records all get sent to the ATF. So those 4473s could end up in the hands of the ATF, but they don't just by routine practice get sent off to the ATF at any point. And in Oregon, I don't know how different states do their background checks. In Oregon, there's no record of the gun. It's a record of the background check. All it says is we ran a background check on this guy and we green lighted it. It doesn't say we ran a background check and he was buying a Remington 870 with this serial number. That's not the way they're tracked. They say they don't keep the records. I wouldn't bet my life on it because I work in technology and data never dies. It just goes somewhere else. I honestly don't believe that the state just automatically, out of in good faith, deletes records of all the background checks. I'm sure every background check I've done in 25 years exists somewhere in a database in the state of Oregon. But no, these 4473s don't go to the ATF. They don't go to the state. They don't go to the police. They stay with me for 20 years and then they get shredded.
So a couple other questions while we have just a slight pause. Not sure you'll be able to answer this one, but do you have any idea how hard it would be to change from an O1 to an 07 if you decided to down the road?
I don't think it would be that hard. You would have to file a new application and go through it all over again, is my understanding, because I asked that question. And so you're making you're amending your FFL. So you would fill out the application and then you would just go back through the process and they would reissue it as a Type 7, I think.
Probably with a new number like a renewal.
Right, because it your FFL type is in the FFL number. If you see here, every one I get from a 01 is always 01 right there. Mine is 07. So every one of these I've received from a 01 is 01 in the number. So they would issue you a new number, but you file an amended. Like if I took a partner in, somebody bought into my business and I put them as a partner. Well, now I have to amend my FFL because it's not a sole proprietor anymore. It's a partnership, and so you kind of you go back through that loop. Now, an interesting thing that I asked about was, if I hire somebody to work for me, do I have to, do a background check or anything like that? And they said, no, we trust you not to hire felons and prohibited people, but I can't run a background check on an employee anyway. With the Oregon state system, I have to have a corresponding 4473. I can't just type in data and say, oh yeah, this guy's no good. So how you vet your employees, you might want to think long and hard about that, who you bring into that business. And an employee of mine can use my FFL to run background checks on people. They don't have to be a stockholder or a partner in the business to do that. So you're going to want to think really hard about bringing people into the business because you're putting a lot of faith and trust in people like that.
And that's going to be different depending on the jurisdiction. In Massachusetts, we have the ability as employers to run the basic criminal background checks on anyone, so long as we register with the state and then get permission from said employee to run those checks. And those are required for anybody touching firearms here in the Commonwealth.
By state law, but the ATF doesn't require it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the state law could supersede what the ATF says. The ATF is just federal law. State laws are a whole nother can of worms that you're going to have to deal with on your own. Oregon happens to be pretty open right now. I can own or build anything I want. I can sell anything I want, with the exception of full auto. I can broker NFA items. I can receive an NFA pre-86 NFA full auto and transfer it. I can transfer cans and all that stuff in Oregon. I can't transfer a post sample to anybody else that isn't a Type 7, but Oregon's pretty wide open. Other states are completely different. I wouldn't do this in California. I just wouldn't want to be under that level of scrutiny with the DOJ and all the other nonsense that you have to do down there. And I wouldn't be a manufacturer just for liability in California. The way the politics are down there, I just would worry too much. I wouldn't want to manufacture anything.
So another question that popped up, you might be able to answer. Can CNR ship guns using USPS, the Postal Service, or are they restricted only to UPS and FedEx?
You can ship I think, if I'm not mistaken, handguns have to go U.S. Postal Service second day air. I don't think you. Well, I mean, maybe a
So
CN,
in,
maybe
in, in
a CNR.
California,
A
yeah,
CNR could be different, but I know that if I had a customer's Glock, I can't send it FedEx. I have to send it USPS second day air.
yeah, and here in California, if I and I've done this, if I ship something to somebody else that I sell to an FFL, I have to ship either FedEx or UPS, and it has to be overnight signature required.
Yeah, yeah. Now FedEx, I've shipped long guns and I've received long guns through UPS and FedEx, and every one of them comes signature required, and I have yet to sign anything.
Yeah.
So
You know, they just
that's going to verge into the questions around the shipping and receiving. That probably best to look it up on the websites of the folks that are doing it.
Yeah, and if you're going to be shipping and receiving firearms, I would call your local ATF, and I would talk to your local state DOJ or whatever, and find out if there's any state law. Shipping and receiving as an FFL is easy money. Shipping and receiving as a private citizen without an FFL, you're on your own. I don't want to give advice in that because I don't want to steer you wrong.
And CNRs are sufficiently like private citizens to, yeah, we're not going to give advice here because we're not lawyers.
Yeah,
Nope.
I just really wanted to do this to try to answer questions about getting your type 1 or your type 7 if that's something that you were looking to do. And it seems ominous when you first start, but if you just step through it, I did this all without an attorney. The ATF guy asked me, "Did you have an attorney do this for you?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, because you've got everything done properly." And I rarely see that. I usually end up having to call back 4 or 5 times, exchange emails, exchange documents, get this, get that. I just happened to dumb luck my way through it, and did all the right steps in order. So that's why I say, get your local municipality to buy off on it and register with the state, get your EIN, and then you're set up and you've got everything that the ATF wants to see when they call you and do their interview. He said most of the time they end up having to call back because you don't have your business license. They want to see that your local municipality knows that what you're doing and what your intent is. So that's
there is a question from the Discord chat. Do you know what's the trigger for you registering that responsible person on the license?
I think if they're a shareholder or if they have some stake in the business, if they're a partner, if they're going to act as a representative of the organization, like, they're going to have check signing purposes and things like that. I think if they're actively receiving revenue out of the business, I'm a sole proprietor. I'm just a one person show, and I'm not going to have anybody running background checks for me. I'm going to be doing all my own because I don't want the headache of having to go back through somebody else's paperwork and fix screw ups.
That sounds like a good question for when whoever's asking this question to ask the ATF.
Yeah, they'll be able to tell you. You can go out on the ATF's website, and all of the documentation and forms are out there for you. If you can't find it, direct message me, and I will grab the PDF and send it to you. There is an application for amending an FFL that has all that stuff on it. I'm sure I can round it up. I have a big folder of ATF documents. So,
Lonnie, do we got any more questions?
Nope, that pretty much covers it. I think it's the answer that Scott gave and you gave. If you're thinking about shipping something, check with your local gun laws. In California, the state has very specific things that they require before you can send something, as I know Massachusetts does when I'm sending things that way. So
yeah, I will.
Guns are weird. Guns are weird everywhere.
Yeah, and I will warn you, ammo doesn't have to be declared. There's all kinds of weird laws around this stuff. So don't take the word of your local, the person behind the counter at the UPS store, because they don't have a clue.
Oh, they never know. They never know.
They never know. And if I've shipped gun parts to people, as long as it's not a serialized receiver or something like that, a gun barrel, a handguard, wrap it up nicely and tell them it's tools. Tell them it's machine hardware. They don't need to know that it's a gun part because some of them will freak out. As long as it's not a gun, you're free to ship it.
Yeah. Well, I have one more question. How long did it take soup to nuts?
About 2 months from the time I sent the paperwork in to the time that I got the FFL.
That rings true for my first FFL 03. It took maybe 45 days.
Yeah. And it's really not that arduous. And when you get on the phone with the ATF, you'll be nervous, but ask tons of questions. They really know this stuff, and I got the feeling that this guy really wanted to help me do this properly. I didn't get the feeling at all that he was trying to trip me up or trying to deny me the license. I think he genuinely was very, very helpful. And every interaction that I've had with the ATF, granted, I've initiated them all, have been that way. They're really decent to deal with. I don't want to be on the other end of it.
That inadvertently answers that last question that's in chat there. So I will share one. So I do not have an FFL 01 or an 07. I do have an 03, and recently I renewed my 03, and I renewed it just a few days late past the expiration because of COVID. And the ATF read my form, found my email, sent me a note, asked me to do a thing, took my renewal application amendment over email with an electronic signature, and it was actually the most pleasant government interaction I've had in the last 6 years.
Yeah, you'll notice on one of mine, I had to write in the agent's name and fax it back to him because he forgot to do it. So and we were just sitting there chatting going through my application, and the checklist that he sent me, he said, "Oh, I didn't put my name on there. I named my name on it. Can you write my name on it and fax it back?" So I did, and they're great to work with. Somebody asked a question about insurance.
Yeah.
You're going to want some sort of insurance. I can't really suggest any particular companies. There are companies out there that specialize in FFL insurance. I don't have enough stuff in inventory. For me, I'm kind of self-insured. If somebody's gun got ripped off, I'd pay for it. I'd buy it. Or if I wrecked somebody's gun, I would take the responsibility and pay for it. But if things expand the way I hope they do, I will insure all my equipment and all my inventory. But right now, I'm self-insured.
So the insurance questions are probably best left for a business attorney. I know running a business does require a certain amount of liability coverage. There are outfits out there that will quote you. Business insurance generally isn't that expensive.
And there are some
like car insurance, right? Car insurance in a bad part of town, you're going to pay more. FFL insurance in a bad part of town, you're going to pay more.
Yeah, I talked to my insurance agent and have a special umbrella policy that covers me for a lot of things that the average citizen doesn't. But yeah, talk to your insurance agent, and it'll be different for everybody.
And let's see, one last question from Discord about pre-1898 guns being subject to the same restrictions as more modern serialized firearms. The answer is no, they're not.
No, they're not. They're not considered. They're not
considered firearms. Period.
Now you can have that. Good luck having that conversation with a cop.
Yeah.
But according to the ATF, no. I have guns that have no serial number on them because they were made before guns were serialized by law, and they're not firearms. You can give them away.
Pre-1898 guns can be mailed back and forth until you're blue, subject to local law.
Yeah, black powder as well. Cap and ball is the same.
Yeah, black powder. So you can get cartridge-based pre-1898s. Those are still not considered firearms by the ATF. But again, we're not lawyers. So if you ever run across a gun that you're wondering about, don't ask us because we can't answer it. We can tell you what we think the answer is, but we'll tell you to go talk to a lawyer.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, so anything I said is just my personal experience in Oregon. But don't hesitate to get involved with the ATF at this level. They really are decent to work with. They really do want to help you. They don't want to come out here and seize my books and shut me down. They are going to give you every opportunity to ask questions, and you will call the ATF a ton in the beginning because you're so scared of screwing it up, and they don't hesitate to answer the call.
Yeah. It's been my experience as well. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I do want to end with an anecdote from here in Massachusetts, where you're in a more liberal jurisdiction, a more democratically controlled jurisdiction. Your experience may not be as friendly as Scott's.
Yes.
I'm watching a nasty zoning fight happen in my town over some FFL that wanted to open up across town, and suddenly this town decided that it needed to have new zoning laws. So your mileage may vary. You want to get real intimate with your local PD, real intimate with the ATF, and real intimate with your local zoning board if you're going to open one of these businesses up.
Yeah, do your homework before you send it off to the ATF, because otherwise you're just wasting $150.
Or more.
Yeah, yeah, you're gonna waste a lot of time. Get your business license first. Get all that stuff done first, and then deal with the ATF. All right. Well,
all right. I think we're wrapped up, right?
Yep, we're good.
All right. Well, so at this point, I usually ask Scott what he's doing next week, but I know that we don't know yet.
We'll figure it out.
Unless he's got a wild hair that he wants to tell us about.
Well, I got to go order some food, and then I'll be on on Discord.
Outstanding. So for folks who don't know, after this, we usually congregate on our Discord server, which is open to members only, which should mean any of the people here in the Zoom chat. We've got a pretty good group tonight, so we love to see all you there. If you don't know how to get there, let's see. I'll drop a link into the chat, and make sure you have your member number so we know who you are, so that we can get you in.
All right. Well, see you. I'll talk to you shortly.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Okay. See you in a minute. Bye.
Thanks for coming.